Yeah, that's really cool, man. I mean,
Wow.
like,
All
but
right.
that's the way. One way of appreciating, even though you're not from the culture. You know, like, yeah,
Oh, they're
Mm.
Paracelis.
Arcelis, yes.
yeah. There you go.
Wow.
Aramay Sinnon's the Gadda weaving story.
Aramay
Wow.
Sinnon, A Gadang Weaving Story. Written by Margaret Balanci and Annalyn Salvador Amores. Illustrated by Justine Gabriela Amores. I am Aramay. I am a Gadang. In the past, the Gadang were highly nomadic people. When I was young, we moved to different places with my family. We were always in search of fertile land to till and a place that is rich in food source. My ancestors wore bark clothing to protect them from harsh weather and to keep their bodies warm at night. They made their own clothing from the litak, the bark of the trees. Later on, they learned how to weave. The women weaving on their backstrap looms, while the men weaving rattan baskets at the back of their homes. Everybody kept busy while waiting for the harvest season. My mother, Ina Bukay, was a master weaver. She wove the most beautiful of gadang textiles. But a gadang garment is not woven overnight. It takes months of hard work, and it all starts with a kapat. She would plant the kapat together with the apay or rice. The kapat and apay are harvested at the same time. Then she would carefully separate the seeds, bite the cotton, and wrap them in a kukot or betel nut sheath. One day I asked Ina Bugay, "Where did you learn to weave, Ina?" "Oh, it was taught to me by my mother a long time ago. I also have to teach you one day," she said. The day came, and my mother was patient as she taught me every step of the masinon, turning the kapat into threads, dyeing them with plant dyes, spinning the threads, warping the threads, and weaving on my backstrap loom that my father made. The process was very tedious. It would take days, weeks, and months to finish one piece because of the distinct designs found on gadang cloth. One of the most elaborate patterns is the inamata, also known as sinakong. I also learned the lalad or striped pattern, the ilintuan or teeth-like patterns, and the analifambang or butterfly designs. My backstrap loom would sing as I produced yards of textiles. My loom is light, made of fine wood and bamboo. The bamboo has little pebbles inside to keep me awake, and when shaken, it produces a soft and calming sound. Weaving was difficult, but the joy of finishing a colorful cloth made me happy. I even decorated my work with amiru or embroidery and bukat, the small glass beads we traded with salt up north. I made a set of clothing for myself, for my parents, and my siblings. They were all pleased. When I got married, I stopped weaving. We moved to the Patad, into my husband's house. I wanted to weave while I raised a small family, but the materials I needed were not available. Here, there was no pure cotton, no natural dye, and no inspiration from my old home in Paracelis Mountain Province. I learned that in the public market, threads were sold. They come in different colors. I thought I could go back to weaving, but the threads do not feel soft and raw. The colors were too gaudy, too bright. I could not produce the natural color that I wanted for the traditional gadang attire I was going to weave. A true weaver should have the finest materials. In respect to our ancestors and the anitos that taught the gadang people how to weave, I decided to stop weaving. To weave differently from what is traditional is to offend the spirits. I set aside my singing backstrap loom for a while. The sound it produces is faint now. I thought it was time for it to rest. I still wore my akin, a hand-woven wraparound skirt that my mother gave me when I was young. It is now 60 years old, and it is still sturdy, and the color is still bright. I long to weave, to make my loom sing again. One day, my grandchildren invited me to come home to Paracelis. I said yes. I wanted to visit my relatives and friends. I was surprised to see my old home changed. The roads were wide and cemented, the shrubs where we got our cotton were gone, and the trees were cut down to give way to houses and buildings. Bananas, corn, and rice replaced the plant dyes. Even the tayum or indigo dye was gone. The river, where we used to wash our newly dyed cloths, had dried up. Many of my old friends had passed away. My sadness turned to joy when I saw my grandchildren and their mothers show interest in weaving. They kept some of the gadang clothes their parents left behind and are now learning the process of how to make them. Even if I am old with poor eyesight, I patiently taught them how to weave gadang textiles. All the cotton is gone, so we used the colorful polyester threads from the Baguio City public market. The young women I taught are weaving the traditional patterns on their backstrap looms, using the new materials readily available from the market. I am pleased that their daughters and even their friends are patiently learning how to weave, do embroidery, and beadwork for our traditional attire. They are continuing the art of Sinnon.
You know, they have like the most interesting designs on their clothes, you know.
Yeah.
And they're
They
kind
say-
of like a mix. I mean, if you look at the skirts, they kind of have that darker kind of look, almost similar to if we got people, except they're adorned with the shells and everything like
Yeah,
that.
the beads.
Yeah,
Kalinga.
the beads.
You know, I'm really
Yeah, like-
fascinated
everyone.
by
I am Justin, and I illustrated for the book Aramay,
Look at the
Sinnon,
amount
a Gadang
of
weaving
decor,
story. In the
out
process,
there.
we were
And
able to
just
look
it's
at
there to get your
textiles,
attention. Remember, Grandma
weaving
used to do that.
implements, photographs, and
Like
actual
Yeah.
she even
research
could get like
handed
those plastic beads from like wherever, you know, and from the party store, and it'd still be worth wearing, right?
Yeah, she definitely liked to sew different things on there.
look
Particularly, these folks are like, you know, like the gadang, you know, like in Paracelsus, not in those areas. They all wear this like well adorned
Mhm.
clothes, and it's people say, oh, that looks like Kalinga, you know what I mean? And it
Mhm.
just makes sense because they border it, right? They
Yeah.
border Kalinga. And what's interesting is that they said I think in the story in the book they were saying that like they would
Up north.
trade up north.
Yeah.
So that would probably be the Kalinga folks. So they were
Makes sense.
they were making they were basically exchanging. So, you know, I can see where they would influence each other a lot.
Yeah.
Their dances are
And-
similar too.
Oh yeah, totally.
in hand with Manang Margaret and the Corditex team for reference and storyboards. I also took some photos of myself to imitate weaving positions. I mainly used watercolor and gouache on paper. It was a bit of a challenge illustrating, but this project was far the most fun and exciting I've ever done. I hope this book will inspire Filipino kids to share the love for our culture, tradition, and most especially for weaving. Thank you so much, Corditex and Gadang community, for giving me a chance to draw your story.
Man, I want to buy these books.
Ako po si Margaret
Yeah, for
Balansi.
sure.
At nais ko lamang pong magpasalamat sa bumubuo ng Corditex Project sa Misayo Cordillera, sa UP Baguio, especially po kay Dr. Ikin Salvador Amores, sa pagpili po sa amin ng mga Gadang Ethno-Linguistic Group para makagawa po ng children's book ng mga tungkol sa weaving ng Cordillera. Isa pong napakalaking opportunity po para sa amin na mapasali po sa project na ito at ma-share namin kung ano yung mga natutunan namin at alam namin tungkol sa weaving or paghahabi ng mga gadang. Sana po ay maging inspirasyon itong children's book na ito para ma-inspire yung mga magbabasa at ma-inspire pa yung ibang mga gustong magsulat ng libro. And sana ay may mga matutunan din yung mga bata na magbabasa nito na kailangan na pahalagahan at protektahan at kailangan na ipagmalaki kung saan kagaling at kung gaano kayaman ang mga kultura at sining na minanapan natin sa ating mga ninuno. So sana po looking forward for making more books at sana po ay maging successful itong launching ng Corditex children's books na ito. At sana maraming sumuporta at sana po ay maraming matututunan yung mga magbabasa nito. Yun lamang po. Maraming salamat.
You know, it's interesting that in the beginning of that story, they mentioned the bark, right? And my uncle told me that all the kids used to use, before they even started to wear like anything like weaved or anything like that for their wanas, like they would wear originally they would wear like bark. Yeah, it was just the bark.